And literally from the frying pan to the fireplace, which he is almost in Washington, D.C., Chairman Adam Schiff joins us now. Good morning, Chairman.
Good morning.
I have to ask you, because you are my congressman, as you know. I consider you a friend. Again, you have the same temperament you've always had. You are the least like bomb throwing kind of congressman. You are calm. You are nice. You are professional. What is it like to be bullied by the president of the United States? Like, I would have to say, I don't know if it's daily, but it's at least weekly, isn't it? I mean, did you have a bully when you were growing up?
I had a few that tried along the way. None particularly successfully, but I've had to get used to it. It was rather shocking the first time it happened. I remember he tweeted something about corrupt Adam Schiff, blah, 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 sleazy Adam Schiff. And I walked onto the House floor the next day, and Mike Thompson, my colleague from Napa, you may have to bleep this out. I don't know what you're allowed to show on your show. But Mike Thompson says, Adam, you should reply back to the president on Twitter. Mr. President, when they go low, we go high. Go fuck yourself.
Yep, we have to dump that.
I don't think I can do that, Mike, but I do appreciate the suggestion. But I have, more or less had to get used to it.
Wow.
All right, now I have lived. Chairman Adam Schiff has dropped an F-bomb on my show. It was not his F-bomb. He was merely recounting a story.
I was merely quoting my colleague, with his permission, by the way.
So stipulated, Counselor. Now, sidebar. Because, particularly now, as you tweeted, in the midst of this, you said now we're at 80,000. You said over 70,000, all right, 80,000 Americans dead, more than 20. Now we're at 30 million unemployed? This was last week. No national testing and trace strategy. What was the president's message to the nation this morning? That I am dirty and I'm going down. I have said he's unfit for office, and every day he proves me right. And the fact that they tried to do this Flynn thing under the cover of a pandemic, and I loved your line. You said you can't gaslight history, right? That's what Barr's trying to do. How about him just sort of snickering and going, yeah, well, I guess history's written by the winners.
Yeah, it was really striking. Every now and then you'll hear something very revealing, either from the president or the attorney general. That said, all you need to know about Bill Barr. The kind of arrogant smirk, as he said, when he was asked, how do you think history is going to record what you're doing here to the department? And his answer was, history is written by the winners. He wasn't saying, well, I think we'll be reflected well because we're doing the right thing, or they'll reflect that we upheld justice even when it was unpopular. No, basically he was saying, we can do whatever we want. And as long as we win, we'll tell the history books what to write. For an attorney general of the United States to take the actions that he has to so destroy the independence of that office and undermine the rule of law, it just, as someone who spent almost 6 years in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Los Angeles, which is a field office of the department, it breaks my heart to see what he's doing.
Yeah. Well, you said, I don't think the fact that you tried to create this false narrative is ultimately going to succeed. Over much of the obstruction of the administration, we've uncovered a great deal of the president's misconduct vis-a-vis Russia and Ukraine, and we will uncover the misconduct going forward. You said, I don't think he's right about that. Oh, that's probably someone way more important than me. As brash as it is and as ugly as it is to hear from the Attorney General. And you said in terms of the president, his threats of vengeance and whatever, none of that, as you know, is new. We're going to have to defend the institutions of this democracy until this threat no longer persists. There's a reason why this case is being dismissed under the cloak of a pandemic. Because clearly I don't think this has ever happened. When someone has pled guilty twice to perjury, a case just being, Flynn pled guilty to lying to the FBI about his illicit Russian contacts. His lies do not now become truths. His dismissal does not exonerate him. It does incriminate Bill Barr. It is the worst politicization of the Justice Department in history. So what happens to all the stuff that the crimes that they let him, just get away with because he pled guilty? What happens to?
That's a very good question. Most people forget that at the time of this plea deal, many thought it was a good deal for Flynn. Many thought that he was getting that kind of a good deal because he was turning over a new leaf. He was repentant. He was cooperating with Bob Mueller's team. Of course, none of that turned out to be true, but nonetheless, there were these other potential indictments that he was able to foreclose. There were investigations into his secret work on behalf of the government of Turkey. There were allegations of his violations of failure to register as a foreign agent. And these things were made to go away because he pled to this one charge. But let's remember what he pled to. Let's remember the facts here were that the Russians helped elect Donald Trump. They intervened in the 2016 election. As a result of their intervention, this unprecedented intervention in our election, they were sanctioned by the then Obama administration. And after those sanctions were put in place, Mike Flynn talks secretly to the Russian ambassador about essentially don't react to these sanctions, the implication being that that Trump will make them go away. And so you have the specter of the Russians intervening to help elect Trump, and Trump's incoming national security advisor telling the Russians, don't respond, we'll make this go away. And this is what he lies about. And then Mike Pence goes and, if you believe Mike Pence didn't know, mistakenly tells the American people that, no, there were no such conversations that ever happened like this with the Russian ambassador. So this is what the lies were about. And one of the reasons why these were such the proper subject of investigation is the Russians knew that the incoming national security advisor of the United States had lied to the vice president, who was then mischaracterizing the facts to the American people. That made Flynn potentially the subject of blackmail. That is very much worthy of investigation. And by Bill Barr saying it's not material, he's basically saying, no, you can lie to the FBI under circumstances like that, and it's perfectly fine. No self-respecting attorney general or prosecutor would ever take that position. And it really is just clearly designed to carry the president's political dirty water.
Chairman, let's talk about a couple other things. Obviously, the transcripts that you released from the House. So you said the White House and Trump are trying to tell Americans not to believe what they read in those transcripts that were finally released from House Intelligence last week. You said it's pathetic, not surprising, but pathetic the degree to which the vice president will mimic anything the president says. Apparently, it's not the vice president's view, a national security advisor that lies to him about contacts he's having with the Russians. That's perfectly fine. He'd be happy to have him around. So obviously, they tried to stop this for a year, you releasing these transcripts, right? I think I heard you say on TV, so hopefully they just be stale and now we're distracted by but he's clearly trying to undo the Mueller investigation. I mean, I don't know what you think's going to happen at the Supreme Court. Obviously, Chief Justice Roberts has granted the DOJ regress to keep the Mueller grand jury material away from you for now. What's going to happen with that?
Yes, well, that's exactly right. The White House insisted that it got to review Congress's own transcripts before we could release them to the public. That was obviously a non-starter for us. But the problem was they wouldn't allow the intelligence community to finish doing a classification review so that we could release them. And if we released them without it, they would say, oh, you're releasing classified information. So they held this up for about a year. We finally got the clearance this week. The White House gave up this effort, and we released them. And, you're seeing the same kind of gaslighting effort today. They, of course, don't want you to remember that the Russians emailed the campaign, the president's own son, and said that they had dirt on Hillary Clinton that they were offering to the Trump campaign as part of what they described as the Russian government effort to help the Trump campaign. And the Trump campaign's response, Don Jr.'s response was, we would love the help. They arranged a secret meeting in Trump Tower where the president's campaign manager, son-in-law, and son all attended to get this dirt. They lied about the meeting. They said it was about adoptions when it clearly wasn't. And what's more, the campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, was giving polling data to someone linked to Russian intelligence.
But only in the swing states that decided the election, Chairman. It's not like that's important.
Oh, you're right. I mean, I guess according to the Trump administration, that's not collusion. That's just good old GOP cheating in an election. Yeah. But in any event, they don't want you to see those things, read those things. So they do their gaslighting. But you're absolutely right. It's a real wholesale effort on their part to advance this counter narrative that they're the victims, that Mike Flynn is a victim, that Roger Stone's a victim, that Donald Trump, of course, is the biggest victim of all. And they've got Bill Barr and Durham out there doing Lord knows what Durham is doing to push this counter narrative, to try to rewrite history the way Bill Barr wants it written. But they're going to fail because they just don't have the facts on their side.
I was going to ask you don't seem like you scare easy. But, I mean, we've seen this, him helping his friends, and then the next step is what he keeps threatening. I'm going to punish my enemies, which includes you. And this is where I've always said, Chairman, like, are we at the planting pot on someone? Like, are we in the fabricating evidence to try to punish our political enemies? I mean, it just, because and we all know there's no there and all this stuff he spouts and this vengeance, but are you scared at all about what's next?
Well,
not just for you personally, but
we've had to deal with threats of a more naked variety in terms of violence. So we've had to deal with that. But, I have to say with Bill Barr and Donald Trump, you cannot disclose or disclaim any possibility that as they're letting their friends off, that they will try to persecute and prosecute their enemies. I think we've already seen the president say that, James Comey should be prosecuted and Andy McCabe should be prosecuted. And so this is what they do. And I never would have imagined in the United States of America that I would have to be concerned about people being investigated because they're on the president's enemies list. I thought we did away with that in Watergate. But that is what the president threatens on a daily basis to a whole variety of people. I'm just one among a long list, apparently, of enemies of the president.
Yeah, but you're my congressman. If they want to get to you, they're going to have to come through me. And I'm skinny but scrappy. You know that.
Excellent. I appreciate you having my back.
Chairman, so real quick, what about clearly the Supreme Court is stacked with his nominees and appears to kind of, Chief Roberts is granting the DOJ request to keep the Mueller grand jury. They're obviously frantic to keep this from you and from the public before the election, right? So what is the time frame on that, and when? So they acceded to the DOJ request to stop a lower court order that directed Bill Barr to supply Congress with this long sought after Mueller grand jury materials, right? So what happens, do you think, and on what time frame?
I don't know what the time frame will be. I mean, hopefully we will get a judgment from the Supreme Court soon. And we'll find out, as my colleague Jerry Nadeau likes to say, because the law is so clear that these transcripts should be turned over, we'll find out whether the Supreme Court is a conservative court or they're just now a partisan court. But it's interesting, as you point out, the president and the right wing are saying that these transcripts that are so incriminating somehow exonerate them. But if they thought this material was so exonerating, why are they fighting the release of the grand jury material?
Yeah.
If they think that all of this stuff they want to come out, then why don't they want the American people to see the grand jury material, which are even more in-depth interviews than we were able to do in Congress, because we didn't have the same coercive ability that you do when you have a grand jury. But clearly they don't want this material to come out, but we hope to get a judgment from the Supreme Court soon that will require it to be provided.
Yeah. Well, you don't even have to be a great lawyer like you to go, this is like wife catching a husband cheating and he's holding, what's that in your hand? Nothing, and you can't see it, and it's nothing. I mean, it's just so ridiculous that clearly it's incriminating or they wouldn't be fighting this hard. Back to, just real quick, the pandemic. You said we need to listen to the experts and follow their advice, not punish them for speaking the truth, even when the truth is politically inconvenient or it contradicts the story Trump would like to tell. Lives are at stake. We have to get this right. This about Dr. Rick Bright, who's, one story after another, Chairman, it just is. He was talking about, just I don't even know what to call it anymore, whether it's just incompetence or complete indifference to human life and death. But there is a reason we're at 80,000 deaths, right? I mean, it is just stunning.
The thing is, it did not have to be this way. That's, I think, very important for the American people to understand. It didn't have to be this way. In many other countries, it isn't this way. In fact, countries that are less technologically advanced than the United States have done a better job handling this. They had their testing and tracing up before we did. Countries like Singapore and South Korea were on top of this. But this president wanted to just make the virus go away, talk it down, say it was going to disappear on its own, because he thought it was going to inhibit his reelection. He thought it was going to affect the economy. Well, it did affect the economy. Tens of millions of Americans are now out of work, and 80,000 Americans are dead because he stuck his head in the sand and refused to listen to the experts. And he's still sticking his head in the sand. He doesn't even want the states to follow his own administration and own task force guidelines. That's how bad it is. And
it's everything that a certain congressman said on the floor of the Senate just a couple of short months ago. I don't know how you're doing in this economy, but have you thought about putting out a psychic shingle as well?
Well, the thing about this is that while the pandemic may not have been the foreseeable crisis, what was foreseeable is that in any crisis, we could always count on him to do what he believed was best for Donald Trump. Not what was best for the country. And we've seen that, unfortunately, in spades, and the result has been catastrophic.
It's what President Obama just said this weekend. It's, a chaotic disaster. Exactly what you'd expect when it's what's in it for me and not what's in it for the heck with everybody else, is what he's paraphrasing.
Worst time possible, getting back to the point you were making, the worst time possible for someone who's afraid to hear the truth of what's going on. Pushing out Dr. Bright because he was sounding the alarm on the pandemic, obviously has resulted in tragedy. Trying to push out Dr. Bright because he was saying that this cure the president is pushing out, hydroxychloroquine, could be more dangerous than helpful. And in fact, in the early trial, that's exactly what we saw at the VA. It ended up killing more people than it helped. You need people to be able to speak the truth. Pushing out the Inspector General of Health and Human Services because she was reporting that, contrary to the happy talk coming out of the president, no, hospitals don't have the protective gear that they need. You need people to level with you as president so you can make good judgments, and the Congress needs that too. But this has always been something the president has been allergic to.
Yep. I just realized I inadvertently paraphrased President Obama, and as you know from experience, paraphrasing is illegal. I hope that you will represent me when this goes to trial.
And whatever you do, don't mock the president because he gets very upset about that.
Yes, I've heard. Your neck and everything else looks fantastic this morning. Thanks for taking
Thank you.
Thanks for taking time, Chairman. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.